We are going to lead off today with a topic that is just being discussed super heavy all the time, and there's a lot of confusion out there and a lot of misdirection, and unfortunately some misinformation. And home values and home sales are running along the line where there is a media blitz of the sky is falling and the market is going to crash and prices are going to get hammered right now. And there's some economic indicators that I'm looking at right now, and it may not necessarily be what you think. You know, in the Daytona Beach area, when you compare the number of sales in January of 2023 and you look back a year to January of 22, you're going to find something eye-opening. And that is, in the Daytona market in 2023, in the month of January, we had 214 sales to the Daytona board. And when you examine what took place a year prior, there's 342 sales. So these are numbers that we study and track all the time, month over month. We've been doing it for, well, probably since 2010 at least. And here's what I noticed. With that dramatic drop in sales of 37%, you would have to go back 11 years to 2012, when there was just 215 home sales, to find a number of sales, the sales units in a month for January. You have to go back 11 years. So it's an 11-year low. And it's probably something that people were expecting, a drop in sales. And we could talk about inflation, and we can talk about interest rates and hurricanes and so many other things. And they're all valid. But what we're not noticing is a drop-off in sales price. And everybody's waiting for this shoe to drop. And so far, it hasn't happened. Oddly enough, the median sales price was up 1.5% year over year. And it has you thinking, what is going on here? Rates are high. Sales are way off. It should be a buyer's market, and yet it isn't, because buyers aren't buying and prices aren't softening. Prices are still a little bit higher. And we've been saying this and noticing this, for quite some time now, that there isn't yet an indicator that prices are going to soften. And we can talk about inventory levels. And a lot of us that study the numbers are looking at that inventory number and they're saying, okay, when is it going to rise? Well, it actually has now. January of 2022, during that month, a year ago, there was just a little over 1,000 homes available at some point in time during the month. And when you flip it over to January 23, it was over 1,500 homes available. So now we have more inventory. And we have less people buying, and yet the prices are still holding. So this is the underpinning of a market that not everyone has anticipated or expected, but that we've been saying right along, is that there's no compelling reason for prices to be going down, because there's very few properties on the market, even though there's more. Because if you go back in years past when there was 3,000 and 4,000 and 5,000 homes, we're nowhere near that. We would need to probably double the inventory to just begin to balance out this market and neutralize it. So your report right now, looking back over the last year, it's really simple. There's a lot less home sales going on, but for about the same money, maybe even a little bit more, despite the loss of purchase power through higher interest rates and, of course, inflation. So what's the next direction that we are going to notice that the market is taking? I believe that you'll see more homes coming on the market, and some of the pent-up demand will start to absorb that inventory. You see, the one thing we're not talking about is the statistics that we've noticed from economists that we respect across the country have suggested that October of 22, the end of October, early November, was the bottom of the market for home buying demand. And if you think about the length of time it takes to close a sale, 30 to 60 days, then it makes sense that January was an 11-year low. And since then, things have increased with regard to new mortgage applications. And there's some home starts out there that are also trending in that direction of renewed demand. And so to suggest to me is that we'll see better reports in February and March for home sales because we're moving off the bottom of the market. And if you're studying the bond market and how it's whipsawing back and forth, I think you can get tricked in this market. Right now, we saw rates going up, rates going down. We see the bond market getting a little stronger, then weakening. And I believe, watching that, there's things happening with the Fed and other exterior forces which are putting pressure on interest rates. But a lot of us believe that there's probably one more Fed rate hike, if that, and then we will start to see some softening. With regard to interest rates, if you were to look at the last 4 times that interest rates spiked dramatically in a market, including the one that happened in 2022, there was 4 recent ones, the last 20, 30 years, recency. The last 3 times, within 18 months, interest rates were at the same level or below. And if we've been in this coming up on a year, it suggests that somewhere in the third quarter, maybe fourth quarter of 23, rates are going to be about where they were last year. Maybe not 2s and 3s, but 4s and 5s, eminently possible. And when you look at inflation hopefully easing, and are we in a recession? We can argue the semantics on that. I don't think it's cost more. And I know that, jobs they're tenuous right now. But what I do know is that it appears that we will follow the trend with lower interest rates within 18 months of a dramatic spike. So let's start to piece this together. Inventory increasing ever so slightly. Buyer demand coming off a low a few months ago. Rates dropping. It suggests that the market will begin to restart. Now, make no mistake, if you're in the real estate business, this could be a tough year. And if you're in the home sales business, the vast majority of people are way off. When the market is off 37% as far as homes sold, and in a market like this, ours with at least a couple thousand agents and only 200 sales, that means 9 out of 10 agents probably didn't sell a house if everybody just sold one. And the fact is, of that 200 or so, there are agents definitely sold more than one. So it is absolutely brutal out there for most agents. And it makes sense that as a consumer, past 3 years was easy. It just was easy. There was really low barriers for people making offers. We saw it right before us. How many times in recorded history of real estate has there been a sales price that's been a home offered at, and multiple people stepped up and said, I'll just pay more. Matter of fact, we won't even inspect the house. We won't have any contingencies or appraisals. We'll just pay more, and we'll do whatever you want. We'll even let you stay in the house for a few months just so we can have it. See, that didn't happen very often. And it can be argued that almost anybody could have sold in that environment because sales skills weren't really required in that market. You just had to have an ability to write up an offer and hand it over. That was about it. So the order taking days clearly over. And the weakening of fundamentals over the last few years is dramatic. You see agents, teams, brokers are just so busy writing these offers that the vast majority, one can argue almost all of the industry, did less skill building, did less teaching and training. And it suggests to me that as the consumer becomes more knowledgeable, while also requiring more data and information, they're going to be looking for a skill-based agent for the next home purchase. And this is where it gets really hard for an agent that's maybe only been in the business 2 or 3 years. They've never known a market. That wasn't super easy. They've never been in a market where it actually took data and sales skills to get someone to write an offer on a property. And with the expectation of making easy sales and lots of money, to halt that process and go back to school after 3 years in the industry and actually learn the fundamentals differently or better that weren't learned in their first years because they were not necessarily required to be successful in that market, there's a really big pain point for many, many agents out there. And as a matter of fact, we see it. We see agents exiting the business. It went from easy to hard really fast. And when it's easy, and now you've got to go back to school and learn or relearn skills while waiting for the next check. This is the exit strategy. It's strategy. Many agents like, all right, this is really hard now. I don't know what happened. What changed with the market? Well, what changed was buyer demand is a little different. It's delayed. They're taking more time to make a decision. The sales are off. Less sales to go around. There's less commissions to go around. So the skill of the agent is really showing up right now. That on skill-based teams, I believe what they do is, as markets are really good, they do pretty good. When markets are tough, skill-based agents and teams and brokers tend to do much better because the consumer demand is a competent agent who understands the market and is forecasting data and knowledge so that the buyers can make intelligent decisions. And that's what this market's going to play out as over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. A skill-based agent is the one that's being most highly sought after. So when you hear the sales stats and they're way off, it makes sense that buyers are going to require more time and more data to make great decisions. And I think that's what you're going to see as this year plays on. I hope this helped you out a little bit to understand, where the market has been recently and where it's heading to. And these market-based reports are going to become critically important each week that we talk about this. So I hope this enlightened you a little bit, informed you a little bit. And if it's something different you're thinking, you're not alone, because this market is going to require different thinking and different action steps. And we'll be here with you every step of the way. This is Ron Weiss-Zakarski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.